2006, and I'm here interviewing my favorite father, John Kroubalkian. So I'm going to ask him a few questions, and he's going to sit back and relax. I made him take off his glasses, which he usually wears because there's glare. That's why you see him without his glasses. My first question for you, Dad, is I'd like you to tell me your fondest memory about being a child.
Oh, you're giving me a curved question. Just playing with my friends.
What would you do to play?
Well, I lived on Dewey Avenue, 2105 Dewey Avenue, and we had a lot of open fields nearby. I could get 3 guys, go out in one of the fields and get a 4-man, two-team baseball game. One team would be at home plate, and the other would be the pitcher and the guy in the fielder. We had baseball fields, you might call them, half-ass at that, all over the place.
But you live where you lived on Dewey Avenue. Did Grandpa always work out of his home?
Through my, that's the only thing I can remember. Now earlier when we lived on Parkwood Road before Dewey Avenue, he had a job with selling in sales carbon copying paper at the time, something they don't even have today.
Carbon paper you put between 2 pieces of paper. That's and you could make a copy by typing. Yep. And then he started his business. How old were you when you remember him working in your dining room with all the typewriters all over the place?
I always felt awkward about people coming in the house. And
people, you mean friends and stuff?
No. Customers. He sold and repaired typewriters. They come in and walk right through the living room into the dining room. And he was one of the things I always said about my father versus me is he could sell sand on the desert and I'd have trouble selling water. Because he was a good salesman, and he always, during the quote Depression years, he always had food on the table, and we had a good warm life. Mm-hmm. I had wonderful parents.
You had a mother that loved you and a father and a sister. Can you tell me about your sister?
Aunt Diane, she's my sister Diane, but in the final years I always called her Aunt Diane, and I call her my children. I was a pain in the neck to Diane. I remember when she was 14, 15, and 16, and I was a year and a half younger than her. And she'd have a boyfriend. I remember Bruce Otto. I don't even know why I remember the name. And she'd be out in the backyard with Bruce doing sinister things like holding hands and maybe something worse. And I'd be out there just being in the way. It seems to me I have a recollection of one time he gave me a dime to get the hell out of the backyard. I don't know what his intentions were. But I had a loving, caring sister, as were my parents. And
what was, when were you born?
Well,
May
29th, 1930. I heard the phrase at the height of the Depression, but I think that was a little bit early in the Depression. But I was never victimized by the Depression. Like I said, my father always had warm house and food on the table. And
was the cemetery across the street from you when you were a young child?
When I was a young child, I lived down in Elmira for about 11 or 12 months. I don't know why my dad moved over there. Then we come back.
Were you born there?
No, I was born in Rochester. We come back and went to Parkwood Road, which was across from the cemetery. But we lived up the road, so I wasn't close to the cemetery. Then we moved on Dewey Avenue, where coincidentally I bought a plot of land to be buried about 300 yards or less, I'm sure less, from my bedroom there I was raised in. Huh. I don't know if I'll be buried there or not. But.
And what was your first job?
I had I was an industrious young man, I guess, a kid. I worked when I was 10, 11, 12, 13 over at Carmi's corner store. And then I got a paper route, and then I set doubles, they called them, at pins up at Ridge Road Bowling Alley.
You actually would put up the pins when the ball came down?
Yes, two alleys. It was tough work, but I got in the rhythm and enjoyed it. That's where I first learned how to play pool and all that at the Ridge Road Bowling Hall.
Was it called the Ridge Road Bowling Hall?
Yeah, it was the largest bowling alley in Rochester at the time.
And they had pool tables there as well?
Upstairs, right.
And so that's when did you teach yourself how to play pool, or did you have anybody teach you?
No, I just would play and do a little gambling. In fact, pool kept me in spending money out throughout my high school years and pre-service years. I worked at Kodak for 2.5 years, and I put my checks in the bank. And I just lived off my pool winnings.
And then when you...
Billiards, I guess.
Billiards. And then so you worked at Kodak for a couple of years, and then you went in the service?
Worked at Kodak about 2.5 years. Korean War came along, and I enlisted in the Air Force for 4 years on January 2nd, 1952. I went off to war.
And what was that like?
It was the best thing that ever happened to me, because I was quite satisfied to punch a clock at Kodak and live happily ever after, maybe getting married, buying a box house, and I went off to war. I went off to the service, excuse me, and I took orders from, excuse the word, real assholes, and I realized I had to get an education when I got out. I had 4 long years ahead of me, but it helped sustain me no matter how not difficult the service wasn't difficult. I knew I could do a lot better when I got out, and I had enough confidence in myself. I could become I'd probably get through college and whatever I wanted to be.
So you went into the service, you went to the Korean War. Where were you stationed?
Went to basic training in Lackland Air Force Base, San Antonio, Texas. Went out to Denver, Colorado at Lowry Air Force Base for about...
How did you get from one place to the next?
Oh, the Air Force flew me up, probably by train. I don't really remember.
Okay.
And went out there for 3 months on a photographic school. Then typically they sent me overseas.
So you went to school for photography? They sent you to school for that? Is it something you signed up for, or...?
No, I went and was interviewed by a personnel individual in the service. They saw that I worked at Kodak. They put Kodak together and know something about photography, which was an absolute line of bull. Well, he'd make a photographer. So I went off.
And what did you do as a photographer in the service, though?
Well, first of all, I went over after I got out of school, I was sent to Germany on a troop ship, which I was sick of a dog on. And we went down into deep in the Bavarian mountains, where I was stationed for about six months. And they did